I get asked all the time how I got into the peripheral artery disease space and starting the way to my heart, which is now doing business as the Global P.A.D. Association. We work with people who suffer from a disease more prevalent and deadlier than most cancers combined. It's called peripheral artery disease, or PAD, and it's blocked arteries mainly in the legs. Left untreated, you could be at risk of heart attack, stroke, and even amputation. I discovered this disease when I was covering a story about a new device. It was a laser device that doctors had told me during a radio show I hosted called Kym McNicholas on Innovation. It was a top technology show in Silicon Valley that was syndicated in 40 markets. And I interviewed these doctors about this, just what was on their mind in terms of new innovation, what they were most excited about. And they said there was this new laser technology that they ultimately felt would unblock 100% blockages in the heart. But the very first leg of the journey, pun intended, were the legs. And it turns out that I knew the founder. I was the founder's secretary back when I was in college for a summer. And I ended up asking him, do you mind if I follow your journey from the very beginning of your FDA clearance process clear through global commercialization? And he said, sure. So I ended up starting in 2016, traveling the world, nearly a dozen countries, more than 30 states, watching hundreds of doctors perform thousands of hours of procedures in which they treated blocked arteries in both the legs and the heart. And I learned that different doctors have different approaches, different tools, different techniques, different philosophies, and that would equal different outcomes. And learning all of this, I started bringing the information to some of the social media groups. And I discovered that most people didn't know the information that I was providing. And if you go to Dr. Google, it's not there either. And so I decided that it was time to formalize my process of bringing this information to everyone. And that's when the Way to My Heart was formed. I skipped a few steps in there because it could get into a really long story. But now that I'm thinking about it, we might want to go into the real catalyst for, um, not just providing the information to people through social media and through stories that I was sharing online, and even through a website, mydabralaserstory.com. It is still alive and well online. If you want to see my entire journey and what I learned, that's a really good place to go. The technology is no longer in play. The company disbanded at one point due to troubles with their board of directors. And so that makes me really sad that this amazing game-changing technology was pulled from the market when the company went down. But you know what? That happens. But needless to say, I'm glad I had the opportunity to go along that journey and learn everything that I did. And the catalyst for moving from a place where I was just casually um, bringing the information that I was learning to people. Um, my dad was on the verge of a heart attack, and the doctor at urgent care brushed off his symptoms. He said, "Oh, I think I have heartburn," and he was leading the doctor on to really think that he needed some Prilosec. I said, "You know what, doctor? He is 78 years old. I think it's about time that we checked his heart because heart disease runs in his family." And she said to me, "No, he's not at risk for heart attack because his cholesterol levels are normal." And I had to politely and kindly educate her on the fact that more than 40% of people who suffer a heart attack have normal cholesterol in a basic lipid panel. And it's not until you perform an advanced lipid panel that you discover that the quality of the LDL, or so-called bad cholesterol, was really off. He had more of the small, dense LDL particles that when they become oxidized by the trans fats and the free radicals, that they can eke into damaged areas of the arteries and push walls out, and the arteries can harden. And he had a lot of those ultimately when we did further exploration. But in the meantime, she said she was not going to do any sort of further testing, that she was 100% certain that his symptoms were that of heartburn. And I said, no, I think we need to get testing. And we went back and forth for a few minutes until I said, you know what? I have a credit card that says there's an ECG in his future. And she said, okay, if you're going to pay for it, I don't have to worry about putting in a diagnosis code um, for um, for that test, and we'll just go ahead and do it. And lo and behold, there was an abnormality. And fast forward, I ended up getting him a nuclear stress test, and it turns out he did have several significant narrowings in his heart. And I remember when I was away, and my dad called to tell me he had the results of this nuclear stress test. And he was excited because he had the results. He knew there was a narrowing. And guess what? There was a cancellation the next day for an angiogram where the doctor would go in and do the diagnostic, pump in the contrast fluid, see which vessels light up the most. And then they would treat him right then and there. And he was so excited about it. And I said, but Dad, who's the doctor? What exactly are they going to do? He says, well, I don't know. I mean, he's a doctor. He should know what to do. I mean, why would the hospital hire a doctor who didn't have the skills? And I said, well, Dad, I have experience from traveling the world and watching hundreds of doctors that just because they have the title doesn't mean they have the right skill set for you. Doctors finish at the top of the class and the bottom of the class and still get the title and graduate just like everybody else with every other degree. So I convinced him to take a step back and allow the doctor to call me and have a conversation. So his cardiologist calls me and he says, Kym, we got to get him in. We got to have this test. It's no big deal. I know the interventional cardiologist. He does a lot of my patients. And I said, but what is he going to do? He says, oh, I don't know. I just trust him. And I said, well, I don't. I want a CT scan prior to this. And I want to have a more productive and satisfying conversation about plan A, plan B, and plan C, even a plan D, right? And he says, Kym, no, I mean, we're going to have to do this angiogram anyway. So why delay what's inevitable? Let's just get them on the table. We got the cancellation. We'll just get this done. Just trust me. And I said, no, I want that CT scan. He said, well, the imaging isn't really going to be that good anyway. It's just a waste of time. And I said, well, doctor, what about a 256 slice CT scan? Silence. And he said, oh, yeah. 3D modeling of the heart. Yeah, that's really good. We just got one of those 6 months ago. I was like, I know. Let's make use of it. I said, you know what to tell the insurance company to get that approved, don't you? And he said, yes. And that's always an important question. Doctors know what they need to tell the insurance company to get something that they know that you need and what's best for you. And ultimately, what was interesting is that he agreed that it was a great idea. So lo and behold, we got the 256 slice CT scan. The interventional cardiologist was even so interested in seeing the results and going over them with us because it was such a new technology to the hospital that we had an amazing 2-hour consult with my dad, my mom, the interventional cardiologist, and the cardiologist, and even a PA came in because they were so interested. And we had a great discussion about all of the different areas. And they pointed out where the significant narrowings were. And what we started at was he was planning to go in with 5 stents and roto-root everything. And ultimately, he ended up with just getting 1 stent at the time. And then we put him on a serious lifestyle modification program. And so throughout that whole experience, my dad still credits me for saving his life. I decided that I needed to do more than just provide information to other people. And the area in which I had most experience was peripheral artery disease. And so that's actually when the way to my heart was born in 2019 on September 4th, my birthday, coincidentally, it came to be. And I decided to provide not just education, but high touch advocacy, preparing people for their appointments, advocating for them during their appointments, helping to ask the questions that aren't being asked, and helping to translate that information more effectively from the doctor to the patient, and then following up with people after their appointments to ensure that they had a comprehensive or have a comprehensive understanding of the diagnosis, of the treatment options. And then we also work on getting the second opinion, because it's really important before any procedure or even with just a diagnosis that you do get a second opinion. And any doctor that does not want you to get a second opinion, or balks at it, or makes you feel bad about it, or, makes you feel guilty because you want to get one, or that you don't trust them, they're not a doctor that you want to be with anyway, because the greatest doctors actually love when you go and get a second opinion. And in fact, they want you to come back and share with them what the other doctor had said, because the greatest doctors love to learn from one another. And that's why I love going to conferences such as what I'm attending next week with the new Cardiovascular Horizons conference in New Orleans and CVH. I go to conferences all over the world. And what I love is the doctors sharing their knowledge with other doctors, and the doctors that are there asking questions and wanting to learn more, wanting to grow, wanting to do better for every single one of you every day.